So, welcome to the Knowledge Exchange UK webinar series. I'm Stuart Wilkinson, the CEO of Knowledge Exchange UK. And as you will probably know, having come across this webinar, we're very keen to support knowledge exchange in all its forms. And we realise that this involves a number of different actors in that process, from the academic research base through professionals that support those academics, through to partners in industry and other beneficiaries of research. And we're keen to support the perspectives and understand the perspectives from a variety of different angles into the process of knowledge exchange. And so it's a delight to be able to introduce this webinar on translating research into action, coming very much from the learnings and perspectives of the Developing Business Aware Academics Programme. And so I'm delighted that we're joined by Alison, Joe, and Greg from that programme to tell us a little bit more about what they're learning and a little bit more of the insights, and also how the KEUK community might be able to contribute and play a part in the thinking as it develops. So as I say, they're quite happy to take questions. There'll be some time at the end for that. So do think of your questions, put them in the Q&A box as we go through, and then we'll fill them as we go. But without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Alison, Joe, and Greg to sort of walk us through their presentation and sort of prompt some thoughts. So thank you.
Thanks very much, Stuart, and welcome everybody. So I'm joined here today by two members of the Developing Business Aware Academics team, and I've got a slide coming up that will show you the full team. But essentially, I'm the Programme Director. I'm a professor in the Business School at the University of Exeter. Joe here is our Impact Fellow on the project, and Greg is one of our engagement managers. So Joe will be presenting in a little while, and Greg will be available during the Q&A in case you've got any questions about aspects of the project that he's a specialist in. So just pausing on this slide, because there's a QR code on the top right hand corner of the screen that will take you to our website, I believe. So if you are interested in knowing more about the project beyond the overview that we're giving you here today, then please do follow that and you can access the website. And at the end of the webinar, we'll also give you a couple of QR codes that will take you through to a couple of other places where you can stay in touch with us. So let me see if I can move on to the next slide. So the agenda for today is a general overview of the Developing Business Aware Academics project. So you've got a little bit of context to the things that we're talking about specifically in the webinar, and a run through of some of the initial research findings of the project, and talking about as well our pilot initiatives, the evaluations of those pilot initiatives, and then moving on to a little bit of detail about our upcoming call, where we'll be going out to partners across the UK to trial further iterations of the initiatives that we've already trialed out of the Exeter team. And then at the end, we'll have a nice period of time, 25 minutes, I think we've allocated to it, for questions and answers to anything that you might be thinking about, prompted by the conversation today, or want to know more about, and a general discussion with you. We're really interested to know a little bit more about your perspectives on things that we're going to be talking about as well. So I mentioned we're quite a big team based at Exeter. We are a national project, but the core team's based at the University of Exeter Business School. So you can see there Joe and Greg, but you can also see the other members of the team that you might have come across in particular initiatives if you've already joined us in those. But just to give you that overview, as I say, we're quite a well-resourced team. That means we've been able to really stretch in terms of what we are doing as a project, building up that evidence. And so to talk you through that broad context, then, we are a Research England funded project. We have £5 million over 4 years. We're just over halfway through the project now, and we've spent most of our time so far establishing a really strong evidence base to understand the space that we're working in, doing some landscape mapping, looking at existing provision that aligns with our objectives, but also really trying to interrogate, and again, I'll talk a little bit more about this in a moment, the barriers, the enablers, the motivators for researchers to start thinking about engaging beyond academia. Our focus as a project is on early career researchers, and that includes doctoral students, people undertaking PhDs, and also early career researchers, and that is under their own definition. So we haven't got a strict definition of what we mean by an ECR, but broadly it's people who are a few years out from completing their PhD. And it is about thinking about how their research can become more impactful through that external engagement. Now, we know that not everyone who completes a PhD ends up in academia, either by choice or otherwise. So a lot of the things that we are doing as a project to support the ECRs and the PGRs also, of course, contributes to their career readiness and helps them to think about how they can translate their skills and their knowledge beyond academia in terms of those careers going forwards. But we know that to get them in the space, to get them into the initiatives, quite often we need to align with their objectives as a researcher. So that's, again, something that we will talk about a little bit further as we go through. We have partners both across academia and also beyond academia, and you can see some of our key partners there on the right-hand side of the slide. And again, Joe will be talking about some specific initiatives that we've worked on with some of these later. And very much as a project, we are trying to align everything we do with national priorities, both in terms of what the government are intending for us to be doing as a nation in improving economic prosperity, but also in thinking about funder priorities. And a lot of that, of course, has been in the news over the last few months around the UKRI and how they're redistributing and how they're thinking about how they distribute funding differently. We're aiming at the end of the project for a series of sustainable policy and practice outcomes that meet the needs of all of our stakeholders. It really is at the heart of the project to be taking an approach that shows that there is mutual value in collaboration between academia and industry. It's not just us as researchers going out to industry asking them to give back. It's actually meeting their needs as well. So that's really built into the core of everything that we do, that element of meeting the needs of everyone involved. So I mentioned we've spent a lot of time already thinking about building up that evidence base, doing the research. So we've learned a lot from the literature, completing literature reviews, we've done the landscape mapping, and we've run a lot of surveys, focus groups. We've got a very large data set now, and it's really helping us to hone in on what those, as I said, the barriers, the enablers, the motivators are for better collaboration and research impact. So what this schematic really shows is that what we're trying to do is bring in that learning from the evidence base, bring in those researchers and those external partners from across a wide range of different organisations to inspire initially, so to demonstrate the value of engaging beyond academia. I think that's probably self-evident for us as a team and also many of you listening today, but it's not always very clear either for the researchers or for the non-academic organisations who might be collaborating with those researchers. So we're doing that in a variety of ways, such as building up case studies, talking to industry and other non-academic organisations who already work with universities and researchers. And once we've done that job of inspiring them, we're then moving into the space of equipping them. So thinking about skill and mindset development, and really importantly, awareness of opportunities. And then finally, curating those opportunities for that supported engagement between researchers and those non-academic organisations. And hopefully, at the end, what we will lead to is impact not only for the individual bits of research that researchers are doing, but also broader impact to demonstrate the value of universities, the value of higher education to the greater good, to economic and social benefits across the whole of society. So to talk through a little bit about the evidence base and the findings that we've initially found through the surveys and focus groups that we have run. And this has involved working as well with the CBI. You can find on our website the report that was written in conjunction with the CBI as a result of a survey that we put out to industry. And this slide really summarises what we saw from both of those sides. So there was great alignment between what industry wanted and what researchers wanted, particularly in terms of the third and fourth most evident priorities. So you can see highlighted there, increased awareness of opportunities, visibility of opportunities, and networking opportunities were very much shared aspirations across researchers and industry. Inevitably, researchers are looking for slightly different things as their top priorities. They're looking for recognition of industry collaboration for research progression, and they're looking for funding for joint projects, whereas industry wants to see simpler collaboration processes. And of course, this is born out of existing experiences that I'm sure most of you here today are very familiar with. Industry also clearly wanted priorities, their own priorities reflected in the research that was being done within universities. So this is what we're looking at as a project now. We're looking at how greater collaboration can unlock and accelerate innovation and address that real need that at the moment academic researchers don't feel and are not perceived as particularly well equipped for working with business. I'm not going to linger on this slide, but this is just capturing some of those barriers, enablers and motivators. So again, for future reference, if you're interested, this is some of the data that's coming out of our evidence base, and we are really happy to take forward further conversations with you to interrogate these a bit further. But these are what our initiatives now are based around exploring. So what we've essentially found then is a series of opportunities that are coming out of the evidence base. First of these is to support existing researcher developers and innovation teams within universities to embed business awareness into their existing provision. And that might include things like induction programs, particularly using the VTI RDF, the Research Development Framework. So we're not coming in and doing something different and new with them necessarily in that space. It is also about already embedding in where they're already doing things. And respecting the knowledge and the expertise that already exists there, but using our evidence base to suggest new ways of approaching this. We also have identified the need to explore how innovation enterprise teams can be better connected with researcher developers and disciplines within organisations, within universities to co-create and trial new initiatives. And that would include drawing on business school expertise and networks. And this has proved really useful in some of the initiatives that we've already trialled that Joe will be talking about later. What we've really found when we've talked to people within universities is that there are a lot of people doing some amazing things in this space, but they're not always connected with each other. So what we are trying to do as a project is promote that collaborative working across teams. We've also identified the really clear opportunity to work with existing research groups and networks. So we've worked already, and again, Joe can talk through this a little bit more later, with the British Antarctic Survey, with the DICE network, and with organisations such as LSHTM, London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, who already have distinct research teams who are at the moment really open to doing more in this space. And for us to be working as a project, and for other partners as we roll out our call at the end of the month, to really tap into those existing research groups and to go where researchers already are established as collaborative groups. We also inevitably are looking at developing toolkits and bespoke workshops to support researchers in exploring the potential value of their expertise beyond academia, and really importantly, how to articulate that as well. Researchers are full of knowledge, expertise, skills, but they don't necessarily always know how to translate that. They're not quite sure necessarily of what that industry need might be, or what the policy demand might be, so that they can adapt their research perhaps, but also take out of their existing research findings that could then be translated and benefited or benefiting others beyond academia. And to do that, of course, they needed to understand the industry needs themselves and their ways of working. So we're very much at the moment in the midst of working up some resources, as well as going out to others to support us in the development of those. And then the final opportunity we've identified as a project is the need to develop co-mentoring opportunities. We really recognise that industry is also going to gain from better understanding of what researchers do and what they can offer. And that has been seen as a little bit of a barrier so far in all of the conversations that we've been having. Now, at this point, I'm going to pass over to Joe. Joe oversees our campaign for the project. So she's going to talk through some of the initiatives that we've already rolled out and some of the traction that we've gained as a project. And then she's going to talk through some of the initiatives in a bit more detail. So over to you, Joe.
Thanks, Alison. Hi, everyone. I'm Joe. I'm a Research Impact Fellow at the University of Exeter Business School, working on the Developing Business Aware Academics project. I'm overseeing two of the work streams of the project. The first being overseeing a campaign, and that's really to harness the intrinsic motivations of researchers, so that when we go out with opportunities, they listen and attend. The second work stream I'm looking after is developing the networking initiatives. So making sure that opportunities are in place for researchers to develop their confidence, their competence, and importantly, connections with non-academic organisations, so that they have the opportunity and the pathway to transform their research into action, whatever that may be, through the channels that we help them develop. So building on a lot of the evidence collection that we did in the early stages of the project, we pulled together a lot of information about what motivates researchers, what makes them tick, what makes them attend events. And one of the most powerful findings was that researchers genuinely want to make a difference with their research. And this is often through sustainability, health, societal changes. But there is even people who are not already involved in external engagement told us that they want to see their research being used for good. And so for us, this was a clear indicator of our key message. For everything that we do, we try to emphasize the fact that if you as a researcher develop the skills and mindsets to build collaborations beyond academia, this is a great conduit through which your research can drive meaningful change in whatever discipline or aspect it is you're working on. And so based on that, we have created some case studies with researchers who are already doing a great job. So using them as inspirational role models. They were kind enough to agree to do small videos for us, give quotes, share their top tips. And so on our website, we have a growing page of case studies, which we are continuing to build. And hopefully, bit by bit, we will have case studies that really speak to researchers across all disciplines so that everybody can find a role model for their area of work in our database of case studies. These case studies are actually also being used as a research data collection opportunity, so that we record the transcripts of semi-structured interviews that we do when we collect these case studies. And we're going to be using those as a way to look back and understand what were the early stage motivators for these researchers who are already doing a fantastic job of external engagement. What drove them? Was it funding? Was it the supervision? Was it some other kind of more intrinsic motivation that drove them? So hopefully that will, towards the end of the project, give us some really interesting insights into what makes a business engaged researcher. But we've using multi-channel campaign, LinkedIn, newsletter, website, events, conferences to really build that campaign. Alison, we've gone backwards. Please could we have the next slide going forwards? Thank you. So in addition to the campaign, the other work stream I've been looking after is the pilot initiatives. And so far we have run these 5 template pilot initiatives multiple times with more than 200 researchers from across the country. I'll quickly run through what they are. And at the end of once I've gone through what they are, how we evaluated it, and introduced some of our really early evaluation data, I'll share an opportunity for people to get involved and run these template initiatives in their own context of their own institutions. But what we've done is a networking workshop, or I should say a researcher workshop. It's an opportunity for researchers to build the skills, confidence, particularly the communication skills, to start engaging beyond academia. But in that workshop, we also introduced modes of working, the idea that, there is contract research or consultancy, or there are different government schemes that people can get involved in to help enhance collaboration, like KTPs, for example. We also invite researchers to really critically assess their own research process. So from defining the hypothesis, looking at the methodology, research design in general, data analysis, and of course the conclusion and the endpoint, to let people know there are so many opportunities for them to share their research and their expertise. It doesn't have to be the endpoint that they're working as a cancer researcher to cure cancer. They have many other touch points which they could use to connect with non-academic organizations. We've also offered one-to-one coaching for people to further develop their communication skills and explore potential pathways on a very individual basis with a professional coach. We have trialled an exhibition experience where we've taken researchers to exhibitions linked to a large industry conference where you have companies exhibiting, people representing different industries walking the aisles. Researchers are behind a conference stand where they have a safe space, low stakes. They don't have to take the first move in networking, and they can, in a very kind of low-key, gentle way, interact with industry partners and potential industry collaborators in that way. We facilitated workplace visits where researchers have had the opportunity to go to a workplace and speak to employees in their own settings. And the networking event can take many forms. We have tried large-scale networking events. We've tried smaller-scale focus challenge events. So there are a range of different formats for the networking event. Next slide, please. So in total, I mentioned we've reached, I think, about 220 researchers now, with 8 workshops, 7 coaching sessions, 2 exhibition experiences, 1 workplace visit, and 2 networking events. And we're looking now to scale this to make sure that we understand how these templates essentially work in other settings and with the expertise and input of researcher developers in other universities. Next slide, please. So just to give a sample or flavour of the most recent initiatives that we have delivered. So the first one there was, that's a photo of the Amazon HQ in London, the Amazon UK HQ, where we ran a Bridging Cultures to Transform Ideas into Action event. That was really using the contact at the University of Exeter Business School, which runs a degree apprenticeship programme, which gave us a great in to the degree apprentices who work here in this building, but also an opportunity to bring our researchers into contact with these Amazon employees and have a real cultural exchange event. This was not focusing on one single industry challenge. It was acknowledging that there are commonalities in challenges being faced, so digital transformation, that are being faced by researchers in universities and by employees at Amazon. So we explored, it was really a cultural exchange, facilitated networking, facilitated roundtables with prompts, plus a talk from a more senior Amazon employee and a talk from us. So really saying, these are the pressures that researchers experience. This is our approach to innovation. This is our approach to funding and some of the restrictions that researchers face. And then over to the Amazon lead to say the equivalent for them. And we had really good feedback from that event. The next one along is a research industry challenge event that we ran with Babcock International Group. This is an engineering services company, large scale, and they had 4 specific industry challenges that they were really keen to find researchers who with the skills, knowledge, and maybe even a solution to address. So for that, we went out nationally and found researchers advertised nationally and brought together a group of researchers from across the country who were interested in these 4 challenges. We ran an innovation table plus talks, which included support structures in industry. So how Babcock in particular supports people with neurodiversity, for example. So it included more than simply researchers solving an industry challenge. It was much more of a cultural event. But again, that went down really well, and we've had a positive response from the industry partner saying that they do want to take forward some of the ideas that were discussed. The next one down there is the Cancer Research Horizons event. So Cancer Research Horizons is the part of Cancer Research UK that does the translation of promising research into solutions to treat cancer. They run an industry research conference with a small exhibition every year, and we went along to that exhibition and used our conference stand as a kind of safe space for researchers to then speak to the industry people who were out looking for ideas and contributing to the event. Again, we had very good response from the researchers who went there, and they really felt more confident in that situation at the end of the day than when they came through the door at the beginning of the day, which was great to see. Finally, this Transforming Research into Action workshop was something that we ran for AI-focused researchers. And this one was the classic communications. These are the different ways you could engage. This is how to critically assess your research. But this workshop, we brought in external speakers. So we brought in 2 industry speakers and who explained what they, as an industry employee, would need from researchers, would be interested in researchers. And they also shared some experiences that they had had with previous collaborations with university researchers. And we also brought in a researcher who could speak about the other side and spoke about her experiences of multiple collaborations with industry that she had had. And again, from that workshop that kind of crossed over with the networking initiatives, we had a really good response from researchers. Next slide, please. So we have carefully evaluated every initiative that we've run, both asking for feedback in surveys from researchers and from industry participants. We have run that by having a pre and a post-event survey, and then following up with the participants 1 month later and then 6 months later. Now, I should say all of this is done in the last sort of six to 7 months. So we haven't got a whole load of post 6 month data. That's still trickling in as we kind of move further away from the events that we've done. But the core facet of the evaluation was measurement of self-perceived confidence, competence, so how well equipped researchers felt to engage with non-academic organisations, and then whether they built connections. We also gave lots of opportunity for free text boxes and are analysing the comments that people have left as well as an important additional source of qualitative information from the evaluation. Next slide, please. So just to go in a little bit more detail about how we made the measurements that I'm going to show you next. So we asked people, to what degree do you feel confident? We used a Likert rated scale. So we could ask people, do you feel very confident, confident, somewhat confident, not very confident, not confident, not at all confident? And depending on their response, we assigned that a numerical value from 6 to 1, with 6 being very confident and 1 being not at all confident. And then that allowed us to calculate change in confidence from before the event to after the event. And we did the same with, do you feel well equipped? And then we asked people, have you made any new non-academic contacts? And that, of course, is only relevant in the initiatives in which we introduce them to people. But in the workshops where generally they weren't introduced to people, we hope that when we go with our 1 month and our 6 month follow-ups, we will start to see some increased industry contacts. Of course, we're not claiming that it's all down to us, but at least it's a kind of one way of measuring whether or not people who have engaged with our events are actually taking on board the opportunities and the learnings in order to build their own connections. And with those, we're simply adding up the number of contacts. Okay, so this is this graphic shows, and I hope the font size is not too tiny. Along the bottom, you can see each initiative that we've delivered, from our very first networking workshop, which was at the University of Exeter, all the way through to the Babcock networking event, which was our last initiative, and then coaching sessions, which are ongoing, are at the end. The ones on the left are workshops. The ones on the right are the immersive experiential learning experiences. And these are the exhibition experience, the workplace visit, and the networking events where we actually introduce them to people. You can see the 2 purple boxes overlap because that workshop that I just described with the AI researchers was actually a mix of the 2. We did a workshop and then we invited external contacts in, and they stayed around for lunch and networking. And so it was very much a networking event as well. So that's a crossover. So what you can see here is the change in average level of how confident participants felt calculated from the before and after survey. And on the left is the change in confidence. So you can see that it looks like the workshops are not necessarily building confidence unless we bring in externals. and that's what we did at the one called the IDSI workshop. And I hope that, I don't suppose you can see my cursor, but I hope that that's clear. That's the one in the crossover box. The immersive experiences appear at this stage to be offering people a kind of, people leave feeling more confident, with the greatest one being the Cancer Research Horizons exhibition, where people really felt a great deal more confident after having been on our exhibition stand than before. Next slide, please. We see a more mixed picture when we ask the question about how competent or how well equipped do participants feel. It looks like the workshops do make people feel more well equipped, and so some of these people are perhaps, you know, taking away some of the learning from the workshops and putting them into action later. The immersive experiences, particularly the coaching, appear to be really increasing competence. But this is just a self-assigned, how confident and how competent do you feel? This is not the holy grail. It's just one measurement that we're using to assess the impact of these initiatives. Alison, thanks. Okay, and these are new connections. Now, as I mentioned, this is very much data coming in. We've got most data on the immersive experiences where people were actually in the same room as potential partners or potential collaborators. But in total, when you add it all together, at least 63 researchers reported having made at least one new non-academic contact since attending a DBAA initiative, which, you know, I'm really delighted at. We can't claim that it's all only down to us. Maybe they would have made contacts anyway, but out of those 63, several have told us, I made multiple contacts at this conference, or I found the networking event really useful and I came away with several contacts. So that isn't 63 new potential conduits to collaboration, that's more. And certainly, of course, we wouldn't expect people during the workshops to necessarily be making new contacts, and we may see those numbers grow as the evaluation continues. Next slide, please. Here's just a quick graphic to show the split of how useful people found it. By and large, people earlier in their career with less experience of external engagement, collaboration, or previous employment in industry are finding these initiatives most useful. And I think that is what we expect and what we have targeted the initiatives at as well. I mean, we're trying to capture people in the very earliest stages of their research career to build a really resilient, robust, large pool of UK researchers ready to go out and engage in as they progress through their career. So we have been intentionally targeting PhD students and tailoring these initiatives so that they mean the most. And that certainly is what, you know, we've got the most very usefuls from PhD students and early career researchers. The blue block, it tends to be more senior researchers. Sometimes associate professors come along to our events, and those are clearly showing that they're finding these less useful, which is to be expected when they have probably got a lot more experience. Next slide. And here, I know there's an awful lot of text on the slide, but I just wanted to share some of the testimonials that we've received from hosts. So we've been working with the UK Metamaterials Network, and they've hosted us at some of their researcher events. And we've had, you know, really lovely testimonials saying that it's been, you know, the sessions have been exciting. We've upskilled their researchers, and they've been well tailored to both the industry and the researcher audiences. We've also been working with the DICE Network Plus, an EPSRC funded network of researchers, and we had a nice report saying, although some of the early career researchers involved were quite reserved to start with, by the end of the workshop, they were totally engaged. So that's good to hear. And then the final quote here is from the industry partner, and who felt it was really excellent to get such a diverse group of people so enthusiastic at solving these industry challenges in the room all together. So yeah, we were pleased with those. And importantly, the researchers themselves have also shared, and I'm just sharing a couple here. We've got an awful lot of researcher testimonials. Just a couple saying, you know, that a PhD student finding that the workshops were a valuable source of insights and a really effective space for connecting with potential industry partners. and that she saw the DBAA program and initiatives as being a catalyst that creates conditions for ideas to be exchanged. And I love that, because that's exactly what we're trying to do. And then a testimonial from a researcher who took part in the exhibition experience, saying that the conference completely changed his perspective. And by networking with experts and organisations from different sectors, he's gained a lot of ideas to develop himself as a researcher, but also as a professional in the industry. And I think that's a really important point as well. Researchers are part of industry. They are part of these sectors. They are an important part of the energy sector in this case. And they should see themselves as such, not as something set aside. Next slide. So now, having seen what we've done, having seen some results from our early stage evaluation, which really is early stage, there's a lot more data for us to analyse. And as I said, it's still coming in. We are really keen to now scale this approach and draw on the expertise, contacts, and knowledge of knowledge exchange professionals across the country, across England, I should say. We are limited to sharing resources with people in England, but Alison can elaborate on that later. But we are now launching this next phase of the project and calling for partners to trial this researcher training and networking in their own contexts with their own audiences. It's a real opportunity to support your own researchers, to help them develop the skills and mindsets to transform their research into action. Next, please. And ultimately develop, along with us, this evidence-led blueprint for what could become something national, to support researchers at the early stages of their career to improve knowledge exchange. The call for participants, it will be for higher education institutions, and it will cover the costs of running these, so any local costs, and will provide full support, including lessons learned and tips, and if needed, contacts to make sure that these get off the ground in your own contexts as well. And we'll be sharing more. Yeah, so these are the ones, these are the initiatives that will be on offer for this call. So that's the researcher workshop, exhibition experience, workplace visit and networking event. We, as the DBAA team, are going to continue trialling new and innovative approaches, different formats and different groups and different partners. But these ones which have been tried and tested by us are going to be put out, and we'll share the templates and invite you to contribute your own ideas to improve them and to tailor them to your own contexts. We're going to be sharing, I don't know if I've got the details, I don't think I do, about the webinar date and time. I don't know if, Greg, you might be able to pop the link to the webpage into the chat, because we will be sharing full details of how to apply on the 31st of March in our webinar, and there's a sign up link on our webpage. So this is just to say, in terms of the numbers of people that have attended our initiatives, the vast majority, 54%, have attended the networking workshop, and we're really keen to get more trial data for the other more experiential, immersive initiatives, including the exhibition experience, the workplace visit, and the networking event. And the next slide shows the split of disciplines. Yeah, so those green pie slices at the bottom show largely engineering, computer science, physical sciences, and they have so far been the majority of our research participants. You can see biological sciences, medicine, and dentistry are shown in the pink colour, and we would welcome applications from institutions that are able to bring more participants in the humanities, languages, discipline area to really make sure that we've trialled these templates in across all disciplines. And I think that's my last slide, and I'll hand back to Alison for more information.
Thank you very much, Joe. So hopefully that's given you a flavour of what we do as a project and what we would like to do as next steps. We are really keen now to take any questions that you might have. So in a moment, I'll open up the Q&A, and I think maybe Joe and Greg can also be monitoring that. But we're also really interested to hear your insights. So some of the things that we're particularly interested to hear from in terms of the KE professionals that exist across the sector is to understand a bit more about your experience of working with postgraduate research students and early career researchers. We're really keen to know if you can help us identify any gaps in existing provision within your own context. We also would really love to know your feeling around what works best when you're connecting researchers with non-academic organisations. So this might be based on your own experience, supporting researchers within a university, or it might be actually experience of working with those non-academic organisations and how they have dealt with working with universities and the researchers in there. And then finally, we're keen to understand what might encourage more cross-institution collaboration. We're very aware of the pressures that are on universities at the moment in terms of finances, and a lot of the people that we're talking to nationally are really interested in how we can bring universities together, either via the existing consortia, such as GW4, White Rose, N8, for example, but also for more sort of more temporary collaborations that could bring people together from across more than one institution to access this kind of training and skill development provision. So at this point, I'm just going to open up. Joe, Greg, is there anything that's come up in the Q&A that
So there is one
like
question that sort of refers back. So Clementine asked about, obviously, Joe, you showed lots of stats about academic engagement with your programs and initiatives. And Clementine's asking something which I was thinking too, in that obviously showed the pilots that you did, but were the number of academics involved the same or different in terms of, did you have researchers having multiple experiences and therefore growing their confidence and potential connections, or was it only one pilot, one group of academics for each pilot? So basically trying to unpick that data in terms of repeat exposure as opposed to singular exposure to these kind of pilots.
Yeah, it's a really good question. Mostly we were working with different groups of researchers. So we drew on researchers from across the country through different networks, but we often delivered the workshop as in preparation for one of the immersive experiences. So in those cases, we did have multiple researchers kind of building on their experience. So we evaluate that by doing a pre and post with the workshop surveys, pre and post, and then pre and post with the immersive experience, but then not following on and doing multiple 1 month surveys and 6 month surveys with the same people about both. We just then pick up on the most recent one and follow up on that. So we build on an individual, but we do track, we do ask, have you previously attended? And so we can track back. And I think we've got one participant who's been to about 5 things, but he's an exception. But it's a really good question, and something that we're making sure we've got built into the evaluation, so that when we do scale, we'll be able to look back at which participants have attended which events and make sure that we can account for that in the evaluation. So, and also it's going to be really nice to see, I hope, how things like confidence build.
I mean, I think with all sort of networking events and community events, the first engagement is always finding your feet. And then the more you engage, the more you know the network, you know the familiarity, you become more confident through repeated times. But what's really interesting about your data is sort of looking at those pilots and seeing what those can achieve at that sort of level. So it's interesting, but obviously there is that sort of chronological level to it too. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see how that data pans out over time. There is another question as well around how this fits with other initiatives, in particular Confer and what UKRI and the Royal Societies do, and also mentions what KEUK does. So I might just steal the microphone for a second there, just to sort of explain. So firstly, the reason why this webinar is happening is because we're keen to work together as two sort of initiatives, the KEUK and DBAA, and work out that complementarity. Personally, we are aware, or rather institutionally, we're aware that increasingly academics are coming on some of our training programs. Now, those training programs aren't necessarily designed for academics, but we're increasingly aware of actually that growing interest and engagement with things like how do you tech transfer and how do you collaborate. So we are thinking of how we accommodate and serve that audience better. And in fact, we're thinking about how we can do things in-house around that too. So from the KEUK side of things, we're keen to work alongside DBAA, so how we can complement. But I wonder if Joe, Alison, Greg, you have an answer around other initiatives such as Confer, UKRI, and Royal Society.
Sure, I can definitely speak about Confer because they are actually embedded in our ethics application. We have run and evaluated workshops with Confer and for Confer because they were identified very early on as an organisation that's doing something very similar. And so, yeah, we ran a communications workshop and then ran and evaluated it with Confer, and then they ran their Confer workshop and with us. So yes, we're working closely with them, and we have included signposting to their platform in our resources as well. I'll let Alison address the other part of that question.
Yeah, so the reason for this project is the result of some gap analysis. So I think everyone will agree, there is some really good, well-established, good practice in academia industry collaboration and setting people off on the pathway towards commercialization of a product or an idea, for example, or spin-outs out of some research that's happening in a university. There is very little activity, apart from in a few pockets, around shifting the mindset of PGRs and ECRs, so people early in their research careers, to helping them think about the advantages for them and the wider society and universities as a whole of engaging beyond academia. And that's the space in which we sit. So the project is doing something quite different. It's going out to those researchers who at the moment are not even thinking about engaging beyond academia, or maybe have an idea that they'd like to, but they just don't know where to start. So a lot of the provision that we are building up is actually earlier than coming at an earlier stage than some of the existing provision. And then we are signposting people in. So if people are raising an expression of interest to engage beyond academia, maybe early stages thinking about their research and applications beyond academia, then we can help them to understand what that might look like. And then we pass them on to, for example, an IQA program or a KEUK course. So what we're trying to do is to prime that pipeline of talent out of the researcher population so that eventually we have in 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 20 years' time, more researchers that are engaging in a more active and meaningful way, for which there is a huge amount of support and provision. But at the moment, we haven't got that early stage dealt with. So that's the space that we sit as a project. And yeah, really keen to keep on gathering and understanding the landscape more broadly so that we can learn and work collaboratively with people like Stuart at KEUK.
Which explains, which is kind of puts into context those questions about experience of working with PGRs and ECRs and gaps in existing provision. To sort of expand that question a little bit, what experience and how have you found connecting academics to the business-facing services within universities? And so obviously, academics seeking to work with business are not always doing it by themselves. There are other services in universities that can help and support that. So I don't know if you just wanted to speak on the connections there. Obviously, every university is different, so it works slightly differently. But yeah, in terms of connecting different initiatives within institutions.
Yeah, I think many universities are moving at quite a fast pace here. And I think they're seeing the government and the funder priorities starting to shift in that direction. So we're starting to think about what they could offer in-house. But as you say, Stuart, every university is different. There are some universities that do not have in-house teams at all, as I'm sure you're fully aware. And that's where I think working with the consortia is quite useful, or the professional organisations, because they can bring people out of those institutions and put them together for more efficient ways of addressing this. I can see Joe wants to come in as well.
Yeah, I feel like we should offer Greg the floor at this stage, because Greg actually worked in Exeter Innovation, which is the innovation team, and he has been absolutely fundamental as the other part of the interface with industry. Greg, I don't know if you want to comment on the importance of including innovation teams in setting these events up.
Yeah, definitely. So, funnily enough, just before I joined this project last year, I was working in a new department in the Exeter Innovation team, which, like Joe said, is the industry-facing part of the university. And part of the work we were doing, and we set up a community via KEUK for developing strategic partnerships. Part of the work that our team was doing was looking to bring together the shop window of the university into a single brochure that could cover everything from apprenticeships to consultancy, contract research, etc., etc. And then the more we spoke with colleagues from all sorts of universities across the country, so many universities just don't have that one-stop shop window saying, this is how you can engage with us. These are all the things we do. And if we don't have that as a university, how can people know what to expect from us? And it's quite interesting when you talk to people within the university how much they know about their area, but perhaps less so about other areas of collaboration and for collaboration opportunities. So I felt quite well versed when I joined this team to know the different things that the university can offer and have contacts in those places. And when I've been talking to researchers from our university, but also from across the country, I was working with a university researcher from Surrey yesterday, doing a case study with him. And it was quite interesting hearing how he was talking about a collaboration opportunity he'd been involved with a heritage partner. And it wasn't till like nearly the end of the program that he'd realized that his university had loads of internal support that he could have leaned on for contracting and things like that. And even just things like communication skills and how to talk to people in a way that they can understand your language, your research, without boggling them down in the details. So it has been quite an eye-opener to understand the gaps in people understanding what their own organization can support them with and expose them to in regards to collaborations.
And as they were acutely aware that varies from institution to institution, and it also varies from discipline to discipline in a way in terms of how much support there is behind these activities, which is why it's interesting looking at the outputs of the DBAA project to understand that a little bit more. We've got one other question, which is a classic question, which could take a whole hour or more in its own, which is obviously the role of AI in and around this space. So I might leave Alison, Joe, and Greg to give one or two comments, but I just want to preface that with we actually had a directors forum last week, and AI was very much the topic of how does AI start to change how we do knowledge exchange more broadly in a whole variety of ways. And in fact, earlier this year, we had a sort of special interest group discussion webinar around AI, and it's something that we fully expect to be an ongoing game changer around a whole variety of different aspects of knowledge exchange. So that's me basically saying, watch this space. And we have lots of people sharing expertise. The scary thing from the Directors Forum was the stat that ChatGPT is 2.5 years old. Look how far it's come and how much we use it. Think about where we'll be in 2.5 years' time from now and how more immersive and ubiquitous our use of AI will be. So it's very much a topic of the moment. But having said that, hopefully I've given Alison and Joe a little bit of chance to think of how to briefly respond to that question.
So I can see Joe's typing an answer. Do you want to come in
starting
verbally,
to
Joe?
type an answer. I can say it instead. It's easier. I mean, we are absolutely aware, and we've had conversations with people who are developing AI tools for this very purpose. I think, as Alison said, our remit is really with the shifting mindset and developing an understanding of the reasons why and the early skills for engaging beyond academia. And so one of the things that we do is signpost people to tools like Confer, and certainly we'll continue keeping an eye on new AI tools. But I think from our point of view, it would be more signposting towards other opportunities rather than embedding it deeply in what we ourselves are doing.
And as I say, we very much welcome thoughts on that and experience from practitioners. One of the great strengths of Knowledge Exchange UK is people at the forefront of these things sharing their practice and experience with others so that they can benefit from that too. So we hope to pick that up. What I'm going to suggest just a couple of minutes before the end of the hour is that we wrap things up here. So I've got one. There we go. My final question was essentially what that slide will now show you of how to engage with the project moving forward. So Alison, Joe, I don't know whether you just want to sort of say some concluding comments or the key messages that you wanted to get across.
Yeah, just we are super keen now to hear from people with expressions of interest. So as Joe mentioned, on the 31st of March, we will be running a webinar and we will go live with our call for further trial partners. So if you haven't already, please do sign up to our newsletter and the QR code on the left, and follow us on LinkedIn by using the QR code on the right. And then you will be able to stay up to date and you will get all the comms around that. Also, we're going to be presenting at the KE conference in Newport later this year in June. So we will hopefully see you there as well. And then we can talk to you a little bit further about the initiatives that we've run, the ones that are potentially then in train across the whole of the country, and also get your insights and answers to those questions that we posed on the previous slide. So I just want to say thank you so much, Stuart, for the invitation to deliver the webinar today. I'm really looking forward to engaging with the KEUK community.
No, and thank you. It's fascinating to see the outputs of that program and the initiatives and the effect of the initiatives in terms of how you're building confidence, competence, and connections, which is a kind of key fuel for great impact arising from research. So thank you, Alison, Joe, and Greg. We will close the webinar there, but look forward to ongoing conversations around the topics that you've raised and seeing more from those initiatives. So thank you all.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, everyone.